Here we go.
And Dennis Burgess. Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgess.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. I'm your host, Steve Grabiel, broadcasting from Moriarty, New Mexico, and we've got Dennis Burgess producing the show and co-hosting it as well from St. Louis, Missouri. Well, it's a beautiful day out here. It has been mid-60s, but cold in the morning. This morning I had a down AP that as soon as the sun came up, I was on the road to go fix. It's been a struggle with this because we started off with power problems. The power on the roof of this home kept tripping the breaker, so I thought it was all a power problem, but turns out the circuit board, the 433 in there that routes everything was Microtech was failing me. When I got there, the thing was in continual reboot, and upon closer inspection, we noticed that the capacitors on that board had not burst, but they looked pregnant. So we're going to look into replacing transistors to rehabilitate those boards.
Busy. And again, that's a good thing. It's not a bad thing that we've been busy. Lots of great projects. Definitely have hit some extra customers that definitely need a little bit of help. We've had a run of businesses that are having some difficulty in their engineering and their RF, things like that. But other words, nothing major really going on. We got some construction in the office, which is always a good thing. You know, expanding, making things a little bit nicer. Those things are always, good. You know, keep the world moving along, right?
If you're not growing, you're dying.
Yep, exactly. So, otherwise, we definitely seen some spikes in internet traffic last night. Wouldn't know why. But otherwise, everything's really good. We do have some other shows coming up for those of you that follow us. I believe we have another guy named Evan coming on the 23rd. For those of you that don't know, we're going to start doing shows every 2 weeks instead of every week, just so to make sure that we have plenty of great, high-quality shows. We have nice weather, and we'll continue to go from there.
Excellent. No rain or storms, huh?
No. We had a little bit of rain yesterday, but nothing strong or a storm. Just a nice slow drizzle. We're expecting a couple frosts finally. It's pretty late in the year for us just to start get frost. But other than that, really, really good stuff.
Yeah, I got frost for the first time on my windshield this morning, so it's turning real fall-like here. Well, for today's show, we've got a guest that's been on our show before, and they deal in voice over IP. And today's show is with NetSapiens-Anand Buch of NetSapiens. He's the CEO and founder of NetSapiens. Are you there, Anand?
Yes, I am. Steve, Dennis, thanks for having me on.
You bet. Thank you for being on the show. So just we've talked before, and tell us a little bit about NetSapiens and where you've been and where you're going, and you've got a couple of great talking points that we'll delve into.
Sure, absolutely. I think a couple of kind of caveats when the team told me to get back on with you guys. I think the focus this time around was really just kind of general, learning or things that we've seen in the business as we've grown. We've just passed our 10-year anniversary on the product.
Congratulations.
We've learned a lot along. Yeah, thank you very much. We've learned a lot along the way. We've obviously started the company 14 years ago. And just so that everybody's aware, obviously we've been in the WISP industry and supported it for quite some time, but our key, just to touch on it briefly, our key offering is a core voice over IP and UC platform that really allows wireless ISPs and service providers of all types to really start offering voice and UC type applications to their end users. It's a facilities-based offering that sits in their network, and today we have over 100 service providers running the platform, and they do anything from basic residential services all the way to enhanced enterprise level voice over IP based applications. So that's the platform in a nutshell.
Well, excellent. Sounds like over the past 8 years you've been able to not only survive but grow, which is a positive look.
Yeah. It's one of the things that we've done, as many of my colleagues know in the space, is we've chosen to really build a technology company, not in your most typical way, and get venture funded and so on and so forth. So we've really had to put our heads down and build a fundamental business over the years, just so that we can maintain our vision and maintain control of the business. But yeah, we've seen some challenging times. 2008 was obviously a big downturn economically for a lot of people, but we made it through that period, learned a lot through that, and we continue to grow. So it's good to see. It's good to see the industry continuing to grow as well.
And you guys are outside of San Diego. I bet it's beautiful down there, no?
It is. I when I was listening to both of you talk about the weather over there, being originally from the Midwest myself, I always have a hard time talking about the weather over here because it's always pretty nice all the time. So we are in La Jolla, right by the water. It's another beautiful day in San Diego. And so I'll leave it at that because I certainly don't want to rub it in at this time of the year.
All right, so we got reacquainted with NetSapiens. You wanted to talk a few things, basically advice for business. On these talking points, you mentioned the things always taking longer than you expect. You want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think in general, right, one thing that I think is useful to know is all of us that are experts in our business, be it a wireless ISP, be it an operator, be it a service provider within that space, and then you guys can probably attest to this more than I can even, is that we are experts, and the tendency is to, as entrepreneurs, we're the ones setting the vision, we're the ones believing that things should operate a particular way. But we also have to understand that we're typically ahead of the game, and we ourselves are early adopters, even as entrepreneurs, and believe everybody else should jump on the bandwagon very, very quickly. The reality is that once you dive into that space, and if you've had no prior experience in operating a business, you don't know what you don't know. And so once you do establish yourself as a business, things do typically take longer, right? The logistics of operating a business, the logistics and challenges in getting the right people on board, the challenges in figuring out how to make a sustainable business and close deals. All these things, I think, just to set an expectation is they always take longer than expected. And the thing that I think a core thing that we all need to learn as business owners and entrepreneurs is to stay patient and follow through whatever plan we have in place. In general, you set out for a plan. I'll give you an example. In my case, for example, I had put in a plan for the business, having a picture over 18 months, wanting to be in a particular place from a deployment perspective or an economics perspective, making a whole lot of assumptions about where the market was going to be. The reality is that the market was not there yet. And so you have to make some tough decisions about deciding whether you're staying in that market and pushing through and waiting for the market to catch up, or you need to kind of redirect. So one thing to keep in mind is, full force ahead, but just understand things take a lot longer than you expect.
Right, and the one thing you can expect is change.
Absolutely, right? I mean, as we all know, being technologists at the core, stuff is moving very, very rapidly. So if you look at some of the biggest companies that are out there that have, had success, you hear some of these biggest technology firms and service providers saying that, the 6-month tide can change pretty dramatically. You got guys like Andy Groves at Intel saying, only the paranoid survive, and you got guys like Bill Gates saying that, you're 6 months away from failure at all times. And so we all have to, keep that in mind.
Right, and the statistics you always hear that new businesses that start up are gone within a year or two, and you're lucky if you can stand past 5 years.
That's right, and I think that's the key piece as well, right? Is we all have to understand that it's going to be it's not a sprint. It's a marathon.
Exactly. You mentioned here it's extremely difficult with having the right support structure around you. Can you go a little bit about the support structure you've built with NetSapiens?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things is, in any business, going solo is very, very difficult, right? So you need people equally committed that you need to get convinced to jump in with you, and that are of like mind, and see what you see. However, you also want to put a good set of advisors in place, what I consider not of like mind around you. Make sure you try and cover a variety of perspectives, because once again, we live in our world, and the perspectives that you get from outside advisors, be it close colleagues or formal advisors, we created a formal advisory board where we had one non-operating board member and probably around 7 or 8 outside advisors from different facets of business that have come through trusted sources or trusted references, where you might have somebody that is very strong in the financial side, somebody that's very strong in the business development side, somebody that's very strong in the technology side, but have applied those skills in other parts of their operating businesses. And so what you get out of that is perspectives and people that are going to challenge you and say, are you doing the right things? And so it's pretty key. When we started NetSapiens, we started with 4 of us taking equal ownership in the business. Out of the original 4, there are only 2 of us left. We still, however, maintain the same principles, with the only normalization being taking place in the form of different risk-reward equations for people that join at different times in the company's life cycle. But one thing I believe in is, as you build a team, and now we're up to 32 going on 33 employees, you still have to find the folks that are equally committed. But once again, make sure that you have an advisory group around you that can keep challenging you and asking questions from different perspectives.
Right. Let me ask this: are these advisors of yours? Do you pay for their advice, or are they friends of yours that just throw their 2 cents in when you ask?
We actually do. So we are a C corporation, and everybody actually in the company either owns stock or gets stock options. And so what we do with our advisory board is, depending on the level of time that they spend with us, they all do have some upside in the form of typically stock options. If they are an advisor and a consultant that's going to come in and work with us, then it could be a combination of stock options and small amount of cash compensation, whether it's a retainer or something like that. So it really depends on which set of advisors that you bring on, and what position they're in to help you and provide time. Many times, some of our advisors, we may just give them. Some of them I may not even meet, once every couple months, because it's a very specific issue that I want to bounce off of them. Where I may not need to really have them on a regular basis, and so in a situation like that, typically our advisors will have just some small amount of stock options in the company, so that they can see something come of it in the future.
Right, they have some skin in the game, if you will.
That's right. Yep.
And I mean, are some of your advisors actual employees where, by giving them skin in the game, they're giving you, obviously insider advice or ideas, but I mean, do you capitalize on that asset that you've built?
Yeah, so I think on the advisor, so the internal team, right, the internal management team that we have on board are all, including myself, we're not, running the operation day to day, only from an executive level, right? We're all one of the reasons we've been able to provide the services that we do and the applications that we do with the value proposition that we do is that we're all very hands-on. So the insiders per se, the founding team, the senior management, all are very much a part of driving the direction of the company, and they are employees of the company. The advisors that we speak of and the different levels of advice that they give us, yeah, it can definitely help us guide. I'll give you an example. At our size, it doesn't make sense for us to necessarily have a full-time CFO, right, as an example, and because we just don't need that. However, if there's, a very unique opportunity that we're vetting or looking at, then it's really nice to be able to bring somebody in that's trusted. That typically, and I will say that the folks that we bring in from an advisory perspective come from either our prior lives or prior connections and prior companies that we've worked with and people that we've developed respect for in some sort of an operating role, right? Where they actually may be the CEO of a different company at the moment or a larger company, or they may be, running a very successful business themselves, but we've crossed paths in the past, and we're able to bring them in and say, hey, look, we've got this really interesting scenario. We'd like to analyze it. What do you think? And in that case, yeah, that can definitely help those types of things. And then periodically we'll do an advisory session where we'll, we have periodic board meetings, but then once in a while we'll do advisory sessions where, depending on the topic and depending on the challenge that we have, the business challenge we have, we may have, one advisor up to the whole advisory team in on a discussion.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years, we've done a few of those as well.
You mentioned that you need to focus on getting paying customers sooner than later. You want to go a little bit into that?
Sure. Yeah, I think the main thing about that, right, is obviously at the end of the day, your cash flow is the ability to allow you to grow, right? Put food on the table for the employees, for people as owners, but then ultimately grow the business and invest back into the business. But the other piece also is that it's an accountability measure to test whether your understanding of the market is what you believe it to be. So, really having a window to understand and testing any hypothesis that you have about your business model and whatever fundamental value that you are proposing as a business, it's critical that you get out there as fast as you can. And even to this day, early on when we were kickstarting it, it's a case where you don't have ongoing revenues, and every deal is getting pumped back into the business. And but even to this day, it's very much about getting a true business engagement in place with a client so that you can test that hypothesis, right? Whether it means in the early days, whether it means getting, friendly clients and doing beta programs, but, a deal is the great normalizer, right? Cash is the great normalizer. That drives value, and the faster you get out to market and you start selling sooner than later. And in some cases, it may be the case where you don't have that product today, but you have the ability to partner with somebody. So, these are once again all things that we kind of picked up over the years. But one key thing that I look back and go, one thing that I would have done differently earlier on is probably push the sales side sooner, to get out into market, because once again, as I spoke about earlier, we all have our worlds that we live in, and we all have our levels of expertise that we live in. My personal background is technology. I was trained as an engineer. I was building products before I started this company, but I was never actually selling product. Obviously, I was in parts of organizations that were selling product, or I was supporting the sales of a product, but I wasn't personally actually selling that product. And so, when times are tough, you tend to gravitate back towards, what you're comfortable doing. And I think you have to push yourself out of your comfort zone and make sure that, at the end of the day, if you don't have clients, then, the equation breaks. And I know it sounds simple, but I think those of us that are, trying to build the perfect product can get caught up into not getting out to market fast enough.
Yeah, in other words, get out of your geekness and get out there and sell. So,
Yeah.
Can you give like a brief story about doing this with your own company at the beginning?
Yeah, sure. So one thing with us, right? I mean, the product itself, the first 4 years. So the Snap Solution product, the way it is today, right, was really launched at the end of 2006, and up until that point, within the first couple of years, even within the first year, we had a product at the core. We had the core technology, and we were basically looking to say, okay, what is the right go-to-market strategy? And so we went from in the beginning, just to keep the business funded, because of our pedigree and our knowledge of the business. We had a lot of folks that trusted our engineering capabilities and came to us and said, well, how about you guys do some consulting for us, because we want to go in this direction. Now we're talking about 13, 14 years ago. While we were doing that, we were building the core voice over IP platform, and at that point we were creating our hypothesis about where we thought the market was going. Along the way, we built a small PBX as an example that was built from our core platform today, and we experimented with going to market with that to see if that was the case, and we deployed 30 of these out in the field and worked with a variety of partners and started selling that product and went out to market and did that, only to find out that the service provider side or the carrier side was not as mature as we believed it to be, and so we kind of retrenched back and focused on the carrier side again, which is where a lot of our background was from. And so we started building that core platform for the carrier and the platform. But during that time, though, had we not gone to market, had we not sold 30 of these devices into that marketplace, I don't think it would have solidified the model that we have today. In addition to that, a lot of people at that time were saying, okay, as an ISP, I don't think VoIP works, and I don't think the quality of service is there, as an example. And so, we struck a kind of a strategic arrangement with an ISP client that we have to this day in the early days to say, okay, why don't we help you go to market with it? We'll do the heavy lifting. We'll provide the software, and if it's successful, you take that over and run with it. And we have that client, as of today. So, very much kind of a, if you will, a very fundamental and hands-on approach to getting the product out into market and trying to build value from it. Now, all of these opportunities that we didn't just throw this stuff out there for free, right? In some cases, you do have to establish yourself and say, okay, there's a marketing cost associated with what you're doing, and hence you're not going to get, retail price on something because people don't even know you, or people don't know who you are. And so in those cases, we would, do some sort of a preferential arrangement to get the product out there and say, okay, well, we believe that the pricing should be this based on the market, but we also understand that, we're an early player in the market. And so once we did all of that for the first 4 years, we also had some folks that basically came to us and said, if you guys build this for us. This works really well. Here's a prepayment, and deliver it to us in 6 months. Things of that nature that allowed us to really crystallize the model in that first 4 years, and then say, okay, we've done some market research, we've done some development, we've deployed it to a handful of clients. Now we're going to go ahead and launch it beyond just the small group of us, and now we're going to start offering it for a wider audience.
Right, and gaining those customers sooner than later.
Yep.
You mentioned on the next one is eat what you cook.
Yeah, and so I think I touched on that briefly on that last one too. Is look, if we can't, if you're not going to use your own products, right? You need to be your own customer. If you aren't, and if you don't buy in, why would anybody else buy in?
Exactly.
And I think that's something that we've been doing for a long time. Obviously, you hear it now being used for quite some time, but that's something that from the get-go we do, and we still do it today. We run an internal friends and family network, for example. We run an alpha network with all of our clients that are able to gain access to the new stuff. The call that I'm on right now, for example, is running through our platform and connecting to you guys, all in the same platform. This is how you obviously get more direct feedback from the team. And now obviously we have a bigger team, and so we are able to continue to evolve the product that way. So if you don't use it yourself, then I don't see how you can possibly sell it to anybody else. Exactly.
If you don't buy into your own product, obviously you don't think your product's worthy. And this is a good trial. Your call quality is pretty darn good, I think. You mentioned understand your rewards and your reasons.
Yeah. So with any business, right? I think a couple weeks back at the Wispapalooza show, there was a session that I was on with several other folks that was about strategic planning, and one of the points that was brought up in that, strategic planning aside, is really what is your purpose? Right? Why are you doing this? And this is something. The reason I sat on that panel last week was this is something that really was at the core of the team, not just myself, but at the core of the team that built this company in the original days, is to say, okay, why are we doing this? So for example, for us, it was really the notion of there was really not that much choice out there in some of the bigger markets, and even for that matter, and I say bigger markets in terms of consumer and retail products across the entire country, where there's just not that much choice. Very much like what all of the WISPA community is doing, is trying to provide an alternative, to the biggest carriers in all of the regions that we cover as a whole. And so, when you have to realize that some of those things are more important to you necessarily, and if that's what's going to drive you, then understand that the reward may not necessarily be economic, right? Because it may take a long time to get to that point, or your window may be different. And you may not even understand this until you actually get into the business. When we started the company, for example, I had an 18-month personal kind of economic window in my mind, with some goals about where I was going to be economically. But I went way beyond that because I didn't know what I didn't know, right? When I got into the business and I realized all the things that I was able to do and what really drove me as an entrepreneur, I realized that even that measure that I had in my mind of, hey, I want to be making X amount, I want to be making X amount by this time frame, was really not what was driving me. And so it's really important that we all understand that. And if that is what is driving you, then be core to that, right? I think we all have to challenge ourselves with, the measure of success, or the measure of value, right? Meaning, okay, is it capital? Is it growth in a market? Is it serving a market? And realize that there's also a lot of personal growth that goes out as a part of that process for for yourself as a CEO and an owner, but then also for your team. And there's a lot more things beyond just simply trying to build a business to flip. And some folks do want to do that, and that's fine. But just be clear on what that is, so that it drives your decision making. For me personally, I found a lot of wealth, quote unquote wealth, in other areas of my life, and I was very happy with the progress that we made. But I would have never imagined it, happening the way it exactly did. And so, we have to keep an open mind to what that is for every single one of us as we grow our businesses.
Right. You mentioned strategic planning, and you mentioned goals and stuff, and that's, I think, the heart of this discussion is, just like you had on that panel, I'm sure each panelist would say, yeah, we had some sort of strategic plan, and you yourself mentioned you had some personal goals of what you wanted to do, and your reasons for doing it. They don't necessarily have to be monetary.
That's
I don't
right.
think there's an ISP out here that is in this for the money, because the margins are extremely low, but we're just in it to provide a service that is an alternative.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to, minimize that piece by any means, because it's a means, right? At the end of the day, the definition of business is we got to run profitable businesses and make profits.
Yes.
But I think the difference there is that there's a difference between profit optimization and profit maximization.
Okay, can you go a little bit into that?
Yeah, sure. So when you make when you have to make a call about what your vision is, there are going to be times where you have to make tough decisions about whether you take a client or not. And if that client is going to be an extremely profitable client, but it's going to be a big distraction to your end goal, you may have to make the tough decision to say, I don't want that business.
Right.
Right. And so in that case, what you're saying is okay, well, I'm going to optimize profit. I'm not going to maximize profit because it may be a distraction. And so by optimizing, I mean, it's not going to be completely driven by bottom line. Our goal is to grow and really push our community of service providers to be able to grow better choice for VoIP and UC. I mean, that's what we do. And so for us, a lot of that vision has been there from day one, and we've continued to kind of march along those times. And hey, we all see nice shiny objects as we go. And as entrepreneurs, we say, oh, that's interesting, and that's interesting. And so, and some of them can be very, very profitable in the near term, but are they really fulfilling your objective or your purpose? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, and it ties into strategic planning, and you just mentioned it. You think, well, I could make a good sum of money here, but does it, like you said, does it distract, and is it against the strategic plan you've established?
That's right. Yep.
And the next topic you bring up is keep your vision at the forefront when making tough decisions. That ties into what you just mentioned, keep your eye on the ball with your strategic plan and your long-term goal, and that is a good driver. Is that kind of where you were going with that topic?
That's exactly right. I think the key is, once again, remaining focused on what that plan. Now, the plan, the strategic plan itself over some period of time may change. And if that happens, then you change that plan and you work towards that plan.
Right.
But don't offset that, and different people's objectives are different. Like we operate, and this is something that I use constantly with the team, probably ad nauseum. But the balance between tactical decisions and strategic decisions, and being able to balance both of those and say, okay, what's tactical, and sometimes you do have to understand that what looks like a distraction may not be a distraction because it is helping the bigger picture, right? And so sometimes we have to make difficult decisions and say, okay, well, right now, because we have limited resources. I'll give you a perfect example. We've got a growing set of clients and lots of feature requests coming in. So as a technology company, at the core, we have a client base that's asking for features or adjustments or enhancements. How do you put those all together and decide which ones actually get done, and allocate the resources to do that when you don't necessarily have the resources to do that? But then you may have a client that comes along and says, well, this is still in alignment with what you want to do, but maybe we can help you accelerate it. Just put us ahead of the queue. Now, if that acceleration means from a business perspective it allows me to bring in more resources and continue helping the entire community, then that's a decision that I need to make. Even though it's a tough one where you say, okay, well, I'm going to choose to change the priorities of some of the features that are going out to market. Does that make sense?
You mentioned UC. That's Unified Communication?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Gotcha. And then you've got talking here that there's no silver bullet for anything.
Yeah, that's one that I always like to put out there. It's one that one of my business partners that's still with the company that always uses. Right, we when we get to a point of scale or we're working on these problems, everybody's trying to push the notion of, okay, if we hire this guy, everything's going to be fixed, or if we put this tool in place, everything's going to be fixed. People just need to forget that, because those things help, but there's no one single answer, right? There's just too many moving parts in any business, and we don't, as technologists, we don't run these monolithic commodity-based businesses. Having been in this world a long time and seeing what all of you guys do in the WISP market with what you do, we see it today, right? We're 1,000 plus providers, big now, if not bigger. You guys probably have the numbers off the top of your head, where everybody used to say, well, geez, it's just internet. Well, no, it's not just internet. Do you understand the nuance? Do you understand the complexity of putting a high quality pipe in place? Given the environmental issues, given the business issues, given the political issues of getting something in place. It's not a commodity that we operate in. It's not a commodity industry that we operate in, even though some folks would like to think that's the case. And so, this notion of, one person, one tool, one company, one customer is going to solve all problems is really not, in my opinion, not a valid approach.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you got the law of unintended consequences when you do get that magic bullet that is supposed to solve the problem. Down the road, other issues do arise.
Yes.
So, any examples of a silver bullet that you guys thought? And it sounds like your partner came to you with this idea. Any law of unintended consequences hit you guys thinking you were getting something that was supposed to be a silver bullet?
Well, I mean, and I think the
or have you avoided all that?
And maybe I go back. In fact, it was he that really kind of coined that term internally. Obviously, didn't coin the term itself, but was this notion of, as we were growing the company, it really boiled down to the people that we brought on and the expectation that the people would be able to solve a variety of issues. And now I'm talking about the very early days. Mm-hmm. For example, bringing on a seasoned salesperson, right? Very early on, prior to the team that I have right now, I brought on a salesperson, went through a very difficult kind of sales process and a very costly effort to say, okay, well, at the core, we're technologists, and if we can sell a certain amount of product, not being professional salespeople, then if I bring a professional salesperson on, we're going to sell more product. Well, that wasn't
you
the
would
case.
think.
So, right? And so a good example of saying, okay, well, if we bring on a professional salesperson and then it doesn't mean that you can back off and not be a part of the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably the best example I can give you. And once again, because we are running a business that is organically funded and has been for the most part, it's not a situation where you can throw bodies at a problem and run statistics. So if you go out and hire a salesperson or you go out and hire a business development person, it's not like you're hiring a team and saying, okay, well, one or two of those guys is going to hit.
Right.
It's a situation where you've got to spend the time to find one particular person at the time because that's all you can afford, and but you can't take your eye off the ball and can't expect that one person to do everything, and to also understand if they do, right? Because subsequently, when we brought on other folks on the team, they were successful, but at the same time, understand that they, it's still a situation where, luck plays a part, relationships play a part, right? It's a team effort, right? It's not one person.
With those successes, I'm sure you had to have a personal hand in that success and help shepherding them along the way and your strategic plan and how to make it work. I mean, I've been in the same situation where I hire someone that tells me they can do this, and this, and I let him do it, and it ended up biting me in the butt because I wasn't
right.
I was told that he could do all this, and yeah, maybe he did, but it ended up not in line with my strategic goal.
That's right. Yep.
You got to take the bull by the horns and shepherd these people through.
Yeah, so you got to have your and so then once again it goes back to the original point and all these talking points that I've kind of developed over the years. When I get asked to give these types of talks to entrepreneurs at business school, for example, they're all related at the end of the day, right? I mean, they're all kind of multiple dimensions of the same issue, and finding the right people is very important.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's taken me 10 years to get where I'm at now, where I can feel comfortable and confident that the job will get done, but I still have to have my hand in it, and it's not that I'm micromanaging it. It's just, keeping up to date that are they following through with the idea of the strategic plan, if you will.
In a lot of these particular cases, he makes you make great points. As business owners, as we continue doing business and as we continue to develop our business, you can't sit there and assume, as he said, no silver bullet. There's not a single thing that's going to come in and just magically fix stuff. What is it going to do? It's going to help. It's going to mitigate the amount of time that you have to spend on it. But in the end, it is your business. It is your organization. And you are the person that's really responsible for that. And your job is to, okay, how do I manage all these things effectively? Well, that's how you get a lot of small businesses. We see this a lot where they grow not necessarily quickly or too quickly, but their management strategy grows too quickly, in which case they start introducing middle management. So they have the owners, and then they have middle management that is doing sales or service or something like that, and then you have the actual installers or the actual salespeople. And what we find a lot is, or what I have found a lot, is that these middle management people are not doing the job that the owner would. The owner still should be involved. And the problem that happens is that the owner goes, your job is now sales. I don't care about it anymore. You take care of it. And the issue with that is all of a sudden that salesperson or that sales manager is now doing everything the way he wants it to, and it doesn't follow that strategic vision that you as the owner may have, and or it doesn't go the way you think it should. You still have to put your hand in the pot per se, but the difference is how much. Your goal is to step off. So instead of having daily meetings or daily interactions with the sales staff and questions, etc., your goal is to, hey, I want to have a weekly meeting or maybe even a monthly meeting. I want to know what's going on, but I don't want to micromanage every little detail. I want the department to do that, the department head to do that, but you are still involved in some way to get that done. And that is a mistake that I see a number of organizations and WISPs and operators do in those particular cases. I just kind of want to go back to the focus on this. A lot of small providers, especially one-man and two-man shops, what they like to do is they like to sell everything. All right. So in other words, they go out and they go, hey, we're going to offer internet, and now we're going to offer Dish Network or DirecTV, and now we're going to offer off-air TV installation, and now we're going to offer computer support, and now we're going to offer VoIP services, and now we're going to offer network support. And, if you want us to power wash your driveway, we will do that too. So the issue here is that you become fractured. You sit there and go, I have so many things to do. All of them are not part of that goal or that focus. Your focus, if you have one anyway, should be starting the internet provider and making that business work. So a lot of the time that you could be doing, going out looking for towers, using the tools, researching the systems that you need, you're not actually doing because you're busy power washing a deck or you're busy installing a satellite system, everything but what your core business is, or at least where you make the most of your money. And because of that, that's when your core business suffers. And I get this quite a bit when people go, well, hey, I want to offer VoIP services. I'm just going to use that as a good example. And my very first question is, offering VoIP is not a big deal. It's easy to do. There's everything from turnkey to do your own, you name it. But the problem is that are you doing and are you putting enough effort into your wireless ISP that you actually have time to do that?
That's right.
That is the hard thing. And if you don't have the time to do that and you don't have the time to support it, and it's just going to be this little, hey, we're just going to toss a little time and see what happens, and it's not a big deal, we're not going to market it, we're not going to do anything with it, it's just going to be an offering, then maybe that's not your focus. And because of that, maybe you ought to do something else. You can still get voice over IP over your network. That's no big deal. But the difference is you don't have to support it, you don't have to manage it, etc. So you have to be real careful when you look at that. Losing that focus is definitely a big thing.
Yeah, it ties into,
and that goes back. So Dennis, that goes back to kind of the balance between the strategic and the tactical, because often what we see is, and what we're seeing is, as the WISP marketplace and the service provider marketplace is maturing, so that they've nailed down those processes. Now they're saying, okay, the folks that we see.
I know that we've talked about strategic planning and goals and having vision and such, and it's a very powerful show. Just, let's talk a little bit about NetSapiens. You guys have a new product that you got out there for us to look into, maybe?
So the in general, obviously the core platform, the Snap solution, is the evolving platform. One of the key drivers that we offer to all of our clients that license our platform is access to all of these features. So what we do have coming here, hopefully before the end of the year, if not, and very soon in the new year, is basically a new, and we showed this at Wispapalooza, a new revision of the software that actually includes things such as a web-based a soft client that's built into our browser, so that when our clients install and upgrade, and or new clients that acquire the platform and are running it in their facility, they can now offer, pure WebRTC is a term that you guys may have heard, but WebRTC is driving, or RTC now is driving, a lot of purely browser-based communications. And so a lot of the work that we're doing into this next release really pushes the ability for somebody to not have to load a client onto their PC. They can just go into their browser and they can actually make a full real-time voice call from within the browser with a soft client, what we call our Snap Mobile Web, in conjunction with the Snap Mobile applications that we have for both Android and iOS, that are in essence extensions of business level, unified communication systems that now can be used on your mobile device or strictly on a web browser. So the nice thing about something like that is you could be just about anywhere loading out a web browser. I don't have to actually load a web client or a Skype client or anything like that. It's just all built into my login as a browser at the browser level, and so I'm able to do extension dialing, outbound dialing, extension dialing, transfer calls, so on and so forth, just within the browser itself. So
Wow.
This allows our clients to then obviously brand that and decide how they want to go to market with that. So that's kind of the real push that we see going into next year is really the mobile and unified communication side of things.
Very fascinating. That sounds exciting to me.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. I mean, I think there's a lot of folks pushing in the industry. Some of the bigger players are standardizing some of this stuff, and we're able to leverage some of it as we go. And we're starting to see both our existing clients that have been with us for quite some time, and also newer clients that are really able to now compete head-to-head with the likes of the Ring Centrals and the Vonages and the 8x8s of the world. So it's an exciting time.
Well, Dennis, do you have any more questions, or were there any comments on the chat?
Let's take a look here. I did not see any earlier. Nope, there is none. So with that, I mean, we do have a show coming up in 2 weeks. If you guys go to ispradio.com, of course, you will see our wonderful, any of our old episodes or any of our past episodes are all available on ispradio.com. Also, our agenda, our upcoming shows are listed there on our website as well, that you can go there. Again, ispradio.com if you are not listening on that. You can also go to youtube.com and visit ispradio.com there as well if you need to review any of those videos. Otherwise, I'm pretty good.
Anand, did you have anything, any other advice to throw out there? I mean, it was a great show, basically on strategic planning and keeping focused on what your goal is. I really appreciate the show.
I think
a great topic.
It's been a great show. Thanks for having me on, and happy to help whenever I can.
You bet. We appreciate it, and the community appreciates it. Well, with that, we'll wrap up the show. Like Dennis says, we got another show coming up in 2 weeks, and we will be back when 2 weeks comes up. So we'll talk to you guys later. Have a great week. And Dennis, if you could sign us out.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.